Saxena ji to start the proceedings for today with the universal prayer.
Thank you, Shikhar ji. Namaste and a very good evening to all of you. So, on behalf of Indian section, a very warm welcome to you to attend this program on Mahatma letters, and we will be continuing our chronological letter number 81. So, the remaining part of this letter will be taken by Brother Shikhar ji. And let us begin our session with the universal invocation. O hidden life, vibrant in every atom, O hidden light, shining in every creature, O hidden love, embracing all in oneness, may each who feels himself as one with thee know he is also one with every other. So gently welcome back to all of you. And we have here today with us Brother Shikhar AGNIHOTRI, the international speaker and national lecturer for the Indian section. I welcome Shikhar ji and I request you to start the session.
Thank you, Vibaji. And thank you also, especially to you, for taking up the first half session of this letter last Friday, because I was not able to do that due to some earlier commitments. So I assume all of the people who are attending today's session, if they have attended the last session of this letter number 81, they know the background, but it's still for those who may, just to refresh in a very brief span of time, I would like to say that this letter number 81 is actually, it is basically, there are events which led up to, and the surrounding of this letter are a little bit complicated, because from this, it marks the beginning of the end of Mr. Hume's association with the Mahatmas. And although he resigned 2 years later from this letter, in 1881, this letter was received, but still he resigned as the president of the Shimla Eclectic Theosophical Society. And why I am able to correlate with this in a better sense, because the cause of this was one of the letter that I took only earlier, which was called the Devachan letter. And that Devachan letter, if you remember, it was raised by one Mr. Davidson, who was working as an assistant with Mr. Hume. And he said, he raised a couple of points as seeming discrepancies between the writings of HPB and between the fragments of occult truths, some articles which were published by Mr. A.P. Sinnett and A. Hume together, and later by A.P. Sinnett. So he raised some discrepancies, and then to give that answer to that, there were replies from HPB, and she quoted something. But again, in those notes, the Mahatma had to use a phrase that he had to use his ingenuity, which I think in the last session, which we must have understood. And that phrase was misunderstood by A.P. Sinnett very much, and he became quite upset about that, because he took it in the sense of somebody being cunning or clever or trying to bypass the things with, not fair means. But actually what Mahatma meant was simple, the quality of being tactful. Like if there is a difficult situation and then if there is a simple solution, a simple situation, then we don't, we go by our routine actions. But only when there is a challenge or a difficult situation, in that we have to use our mind consciously, what to say, what not to say, when to say, and how to make things, clearer. But again, Mr. So this letter is basically, he is trying to explain, and there was doubt in the mind of Mr. AP Sinet that which, because in response to that, A.O. Hume wrote a very derogatory letter that, and even trying to show that he knows much better than the adepts, and even telling them to be frauds or spreading falsehoods. But in this letter, now coming to it, Mahatma explains that actually there was no falsehoods or frauds or anything that was told as a lie. But actually, what happened was, HPB was told very clearly that she will write so and so, give so far and no more. So she was constantly told by the Mahatmas when writing her book, Isis Unveiled. And in the beginning, Mahatma explains that people, even Christians or spiritualists, they knew only two principles, body and soul. Even actually today, when if somebody leaves the body, what we say immediately? Unki atma ko shanti mile. I mean, let their soul be in peace. So even subconsciously, and a majority on a mass level, people still think that there is body and there is spirit, body or soul, which soul also was equivalent to spirit. But then HPB had to use a lot of proofs and quotations from Paul, Plato, Plutarch, and James before the spiritualists begin to understand and admit that Theosophists were right. But at that time, still only they talked about three principles, just to give the people an idea. And masters are very clearly saying that they thought it was premature to give the public more than they could possibly assimilate. And before they had digested the two souls, that is, soul and spirit, body, soul, and spirit. And thus the further subdivision of the Trinity into 7 principles was left unmentioned in Isis. So now, although when we are going into this letter, there is not much of technical theosophy involved in this. So we may think, what is the point of reading this letter? Because basically, whole of the letter is just surrounded by these circumstances, Mahatma telling about A.O. Hume and trying to give some clarification to AP Sinet. So there is not much technical theosophy or some like theosophical principle that is being given directly. But if we carefully observe, actually in that sense, I think any of the Mahatma letters or none of the Mahatma letters, we cannot say that there is any Mahatma letter which does not have something to give, if we have the eyes to take it, if we have the state of mind to take it. So this itself gives us an understanding that books, no matter which book it is, written by HPB or even any of the people whom we may regard high, they are not the truth. They are not the ultimate truth. We are given only that much at any point of time by the higher mediums of the higher consciousness, only as much as we can assimilate. And that's what HPB also has written very clearly, that the secret doctrine, it is something for the next 100 years. Now even 100 years is passed, but still research and studying is going on. And also she says that through secret doctrine, just a corner of the veil is lifted from the real painting or picture. So first thing that we can very well take from this, that whatever we have been given in form of any scripture, that is the same thing as what J. Krishnamurti says, the word is not the thing. So first of all, there is no point of arguing or saying, no, this is the only truth, or everything else is, whatever is not as per secret doctrine, that is not the truth, or whatever is as not per this Bhagavad Gita, that is not the truth. So first of all sense of assuming that what I'm studying is the only truth falls away. And basically it is given to us, especially this kind of esoteric literature, to energize, to activate our Buddhic principle, our intuition, so that it can enlighten our mind, through which we can see the things as they are, means really see and perceive the truth. So that is one very, maybe, so it means maybe we are thinking right now what we are studying in a book and making an idea of the truth, that this is the ultimate now we have got. But with this analogy, we can clearly understand that maybe in the times to come, there will be something more. And there, maybe just a minute, I'll close. Maybe there is something, not maybe, actually, definitely, as and when we are undergoing evolution, our consciousness is expanding, we will be given, or we will be able to perceive the higher truths, higher and higher truth. So that is one thing. And similarly, we'll come across some of the statements or sentences from which we can learn about human nature in general and our personal nature in particular, to work upon it. Because sometimes, or many times, we are, deceiving ourselves. We think that we are, we have something, some behavior or character, but on a deeper discovery, or when we go deeper and deeper, or when we see this or read these things, we know that yes, there is a possibility of this in me also. And so Mahatma is saying that whatever she wrote, HPB wrote, it was on their direct orders and she was obeying them. Here again comes another learning, that when she did not bother, or same happened to Annie Besant also, when she was told to carry her utensils and dishes. So many people made fun of her that, what is this? But she was told, my master has told me to do that. So that kind of trust and courage must be there in the disciple, that once an order or advice or suggestion is given, there is no two ways about it. I mean, it has to be absolute, especially in occultism, as HPB writes in Practical Occultism, that she was told something and she did. And now, due to that, when she is facing the difficult time, so Master is asking, shall we leave her in this situation? Shall we leave her as a target for the spiritualists to shoot at, laugh at the contradictions, when these were entirely apparent and proceeded from their own ignorance of the whole truth? I mean, just because they were ignorant and they didn't know something, and now they are laughing at the person who gradually gave it. So there is no way that we are going to leave her. Another insight that comes at this point, very, very important. I know here we have a personality, or I would not say personality, but we have an individuality of the master who is saying that since she did it due to their direct orders, so they are not going to leave her. As they say that ingratitude is not one of our vices. So we might have heard a very famous Sanskrit statement, dharmo rakshati rakshita. The person who protects the dharma, he or she is protected by the dharma. Now, dharma here is not a religion per se. I mean, you cannot protect a religion, because religion is not something concrete. A temple or a mosque or a church or any shrine is not the religion. The religion are its abstract principles which are there to live. So how can one protect the religion? By living those principles in life. So when a person lives one's life as per those principles, then those principles itself will come definitely to protect that individual. Just simple like law of karma. If a person is giving something out, the same thing will come back to the person. So that is a very strong thing and very strong belief if we have the conviction in that same thing, if we are working for the greater good, for the masters, for TS or for any other such organization, or even out of any organization, there will certainly be protection for that person or the group of persons by nature, in nature. And but that protection, when we say the word protection, that does not necessarily mean as per what we think of protection. That protection can be of different kinds, different meanings and different levels. Basically, what is good or best for us, that will happen. So that is one more lesson to take from that. And then he says that when he uses the word ingenuity, he was using in a very simple way, as he says in American slang, which means to use your intelligence to deal with the situation. And he later gives an example, which I will come soon. But maybe he says for the English people, it means cunning, or to dodge something, like I have done something and the consequence is coming to me, and I use my cunningness or cleverness to dodge that consequence. No, but he used in terms of simply to show the difficulty that the master had to labor under to explain the right meaning of the endless and clumsy paragraph that was before him. And that was something related to reincarnation, and in which he explained that it was to the animal soul, that takes birth again and again, not the spirit or not the spiritual monad, which takes birth and dies, because spirit and monad never dies. And AP Senate termed it an unhappy phrase. Maybe I assume that he's saying unhappy phrase because of this image, that when the master used the word ingenuity, he think he is being cunning or clever. So he felt that sense of unhappiness in him, and it came out as an unhappy phrase. But the master clearly gives an example in this sense, that suppose, he tells AP Senate, that suppose you ask a friend of yours to draw an image of a cow for your newspaper, Pioneer, and that friend, with all his efforts and intentions of reproducing a cow, but lacking somewhat the talent or the drawing capacity, instead of a cow, make an ox or a bull or a buffalo, and you, being the editor, were so busy with other work that you did not have time to see and check what he has drawn, and it has gone in the print. So would you not exercise your ingenuity and try your best to set the readers right? That will you not try to prove to them that yes, in truth, a cow was meant by the artist, and confessing that your friend was, not the perfect person, or it was his inability, and try to do whatever you can at the same time to protect your friend from the humiliation which actually he does not actually deserve, because ultimately, being the editor, you should deserve that. But you will try to protect your friend. And that's what Master is doing for HPB. And he says that when Hume wrote such a derogatory letter on that, Master is clarifying that H has neither delicacy of perception and feelings nor any real genuine kindness of heart. And later on, he goes on to say what he's beginning now with, that in him, the selfishness is so strong that he can actually sacrifice his own family, those nearest and dearest to him, for any whim of his own. And he would be the first to allow a hecatomb of victims, means a large number of slaughter of victims, if he needed a drop of blood, and if he is feeling cold, so just to feel warm, he will insist upon the advisability of sati. That is, we know the sati pratha that was there, and in which the wife has to burn along with the husband. So he would even insist upon, that somebody should do that just to keep him warm, so that he can continue his work, writing something as upon the philanthropic subject while that is happening, and sing sincerely Hosanna to himself. Hosanna means adulation, admiration, words in his own thought, that I am doing such a great work on philanthropic subject, while, just imagine. So Master is saying, do you think, am I telling you exaggerated thing? No, because you have no conception of potential selfishness there is in him, of the cruel, remorseless egotism that he brought back with him from his last incarnation. And if it remained latent only because right now in the atmosphere that he is in the social status and education that he is in, he cannot actually behave in that manner. So that selfishness is inside, but he cannot openly show that. But we know what is within inside him. Even Master tells him, Mr. A.P. Sinnett, that do you think that he wrote his famous article, which I just talked about, in which he criticized Mahatmas also and HPB? Master is asking, do you think he wrote that article only to help break the unavoidable fall, to save the situation of the society, the name of the society, by answering those seeming discrepancies by Mr. Davidson and C.C. Messi, to make the work happen and to reconcile the things? Not at all, Master says. He is saying that if he sacrifices in his article without any remorse HPB, and not only that, the author of the review of the perfect way, that is A.P. Sinnett, and shows the brothers, that is the adepts, as inferior in intelligence to him, who is an educated European gentleman, without having any correct ideas about honesty or right and wrong in the European sense. He is saying it is not because he cares even a small bit for you and least of all for the society. Excuse me, sir. Not even because he cares for you or for the society, but simply because to protect himself in case the things go down south. Things means this whole movement of Theosophical Society with which he was working along, or which he was attached to. So in his mind, now all these doubts and things are coming to his mind, and maybe he is thinking that, a little bit after this, maybe a couple of months or a year later, this whole movement is going to fail and everybody attached to that would be like publicly humiliated or laughed upon or whatever. And because he is that much intelligent, master says, so the only intention he had while writing that was to screen himself, so that he will be the only one who will come out of it without being touched. And he would even dance about it, master says. So master is saying that as we know him, he is at liberty to quote whatever he wants as many times, as long as it soothes his feelings, but we do not care a bit about him, his expressions. And now another lesson that we get from this letter is the next one. The master says that just because Maurya, Master M, saw through him as plainly as I see my writing before me, means Master Maurya saw all those things with which basically the intentions, the prejudices, and all the planning and what was going on in his even subconscious mind of Mr. Hume. He could see it clearly. So he allowed the cell, as you call it, means he allowed that to happen. And here he allowed that to happen means he was allowed to write that, and all the things that he did, he was allowed to do. But he says the things are so prepared. I mean, the situations, the circumstances are gradually so prepared that in case the Eclectic Theosophical Society sinks, he will be the only one to go down with it. He will be the only one who will be laughed at, and thus his selfishness and carefully prepared plans will prove of no avail. Now this brings to us to our memory a very old statement of the ageless wisdom, that the person who digs a hole for somebody else actually goes himself in that. So that is one very important lesson from this, that no matter how carefully or how cleverly we plan something due to our selfishness to harm others or just to save ourselves or do something which is not we are supposed to do, but the nature, as per the laws of nature, what is supposed to happen is that that person himself or herself will be facing those situations. So Master says that in his response in the letter that he wrote, while explaining, with the exception of karma that he explained correctly enough, made a mess of the rest. So in his letter, all the things that he was explaining were basically, it was a mess. And now when Master will say that that was not so, and he contradict Mr. Hume, he will turn around in fury and express his disgust at what he will call Master's contradictions, not his. So basically, that was Mr. Hume's behavioral pattern, what master says, that every time the master told or said something about his intentions or contradicted him, there was a lot of anger or irritation which he could not immediately share, but he kept gathering it, and then spits it out in one way or the other. And he was very ready to take the U-turns from what he said or what he meant. And that's why master is saying that with such an intellectual acrobat, means who is taking all the time U-turns, said this, believed this, but then later, no, I meant this, no, I all those kind of things, even we have to appear beaten. And I mean, that is of course, if the person is not having a stand and can say one thing today, another thing tomorrow, nobody, actually there can never be a proper logical discussion with that person. And master says we care for it very little personally. And also in this article, he confessed he is willing that the adepts exist, but he is very clever because if he says that the brothers exist, but he says that they know less than him. So in both the situations, he will be caught, at the crossroads, but because he is never submitting to the recognition of such powers or knowledge in the masters, because otherwise all his article, which is basically unasked, advised, and interference, will seem as ridiculous as they are useless. So on one hand, he is saying that the masters exist, but on the other hand, he is also trying to say that he himself is much more wiser than them. And one thing that Mr. A.P. Sinek might have said in his letter to the Mahatma, that why was that article not suppressed by Mr. Hume, and why was it printed, that offensive article? So master is explaining that there were several reasons for that. And here again comes another lesson, which is not a direct lesson, that master says that having allowed our name to be connected with the TS and ourselves dragged into publicity, we have to suffer. This is one of the reasons that I think we all know, if we read the history of the society, that HPB also in Mahatma letters, that HPB in her over enthusiasm made these things public, and even masters themselves never wanted to have Mahatma letters published, and that's why they were published only much later. But here he is very clearly saying that having allowed our name to be connected with the TS and ourselves dragged into publicity, we have to suffer. As Alcott would put it, the penalty of our greatness. And that is why maybe one of the reasons that over a period of time, at some point there was this suggestion that not to use the names of the Mahatma or even reference to them as individual. We can refer to our brotherhood or Siddha Sangh or people who are enlightened or adepts, but when instead of taking a name of the master in among the people whom we are not very sure of, because that generates a chain of action with consequences leading to we don't know what, and what he is exactly saying here, because we don't know the people with whom we are sharing such things, what state of mind they have. Even the members of Theosophical Society are not bound to believe in the Mahatmas. The only thing a person has to be in sympathy with is the objects of the Theosophical Society. Maybe somebody believes, maybe somebody doesn't believe. That does not make anyone higher or lower. So, because that's why it is said only because suppose you say something and the other person who may not be of the same state of mind or belief or thought does or say something derogatory or offensive. So the karma of that also will come to the person who initiated that discussion. So that is why it is said that this kind of knowledge or it's to be shared with the patras, with the people who are eligible for that. And we should not throw the pearls like that, otherwise they would be misused or abused. So that is one reason, and the master is saying we must permit the expression of every opinion, whether benevolent or malevolent. So that is by their law, that they have to give chance for expression to every opinion, whether it is good or not good. And we should allow to feel ourselves picked to pieces one day, preached on the next day, worshipped on the next day, and trampled down in the mud on the next day. So once this responsibility that they had taken to start the TS, they knew what all things they might have to. Although when they write, we have to suffer, it's not that they are suffering in the sense of like we understand suffer, but basically their work with all these thought forms taking place, becoming in the atmosphere, they in some way kind of create an obstacle in their work. And the second reason Mahatma says was the Chauhan has so ordained it. So the Chauhan himself has ordered that it has to be published. And when he says that, it means fresh developments, unexpected results, and danger, the master says. And after this letter was published, there was a protest letter signed by the 12 disciples of the masters. And he clearly mentions in this that the top two chelas, disciples who signed that letter of protest against Mr. Hume, belong to the confidential chelas of the Chauhan himself. The names were Devi Muni and Paramhamsa Shukta. So again, master says, now at this situation, we do not have any more hope for Mr. Hume, because he has gone to the extreme, and now there is nothing that he can do to help, in the sense any favors or any recommendations for him, because on the other hand, he says what he has done has created something good, because the Chauhan has given orders that a young boy, Jyotirmay, of 14 years old, who is the son of Mr. Babu Nobin Banerjee, and his sister Yogini, age of 18, both of them will be taken as accepted pupil in one of the lamasaries. The son would be taken in the lamasaries near Chamto Dong, which is about 100 miles of Shigaste, and the sister at the female monastery of Pali. And why? So that in the coming times, the founders will have two witnesses in good time that the adepts exist, and will not depend upon Mr. Hume, who, at one day he says there is nothing, and the another day, yes, there are. And the second part is to proving whether we have or we do not have the knowledge of the mysteries of nature more than the men of science and your theologians. It rests with you, that is with Mr. Sinnett, and those you will select to help you in this important task. And that is why it says that although and that is why he says that he, Master Hope, that you will undertake to impress upon Mr. Hume the following facts, that you convey to Mr. Hume the following things, that And again, a lesson, very important lesson, that though the work done by him for the society would become ultimately most important, and it might have borne the most useful fruits, yet his denunciatory article has nigh upset the labor done by him. So this is a very important thing to understand, that actually at any point of time, we can undo the good thing that we have done till now by one act of rashness or of impatience. And it takes a long time to build something, but it only takes a moment to destroy it. And this is a very clear indication of that when the master is saying. And he's saying that to convey to him that people now will regard him as a lunatic, because Hindu members will blame him for years for this derogatory article. And the chelas who were directly in touch with the masters will never be made to look upon him, but as somebody who is incapable of gratitude and basically unfit to be one of them. But this Mr. A.P. Sinnett should tell to Mr. Hume if he agrees or if he also feels like that, not otherwise. Because personally he says, I am ordered not to break with Mr. Hume until the day of crisis comes. But if he desires to retain his presidentship in the eclectic, Mr. Sinnett should help him do so. But if he resigns, Master says, I beg you most urgently to accept the position of president yourself. But another lesson. Now he says a sentence which is very important yet again. He says, but I leave all this to your tact and discretion. Now this is a very clear-cut indication for all the people that sometimes we think, we don't have to do anything. We are devoted to the masters and things will just happen. And since they are overseeing everything, so, things will just happen. But it's not like that. They also need the agents, if not completely dependent on them, to work through them to have certain results. And they may tell or inspire an idea, a thought in the person, but how to make it work, they leave it to the individual. Because they are not here for baby feeding or spoon feeding us. As we all know that self-reliance is one of the most important aspects of theosophical life, that we must learn to think and reason for ourselves. So that is what he's saying, that all of this I leave it to your tact and discretion, how you do it. But he says that let him also know that the protest of the chelas is not due to us, Master M or KH, but actually it was on direct order from Chauhan, and tell him the real situation, that otherwise it's almost like a miracle that the letter of protest arrived 2 hours before the postman brought the famous article. Famous means that infamous article by Mr. Hume. So that is not possible by merely human means. If we go by that, there has to be some invisible forces working behind. And that is why he is saying that tell him that. And even the telegrams were received from several chelas in India on the same day, which is very almost next to impossible. And another thing, all the things related to that time, that he's saying that together with the footnote sent by Joel Poole, there was an article by William Oxley, and there was an appended thing, a note, which is by Master Joel Poole. And the September issue of the Theosophist is calculated to create a certain sensation among the mystics of England and America. So which means, and not only among our Hindus. So again, very often we see things like happening uh, in a normal way, in a routine way, but actually there are forces, invisible forces, which are working to have a certain impact on during certain specific durations or events. That can be any event, not only an event of a TS gathering, a convention, or a lodge meeting or anything, but even a meeting of world political leaders. There may be some invisible forces which are trying to bring about a change or some policies for the welfare of the whole planet. So some invisible force are always working to create to give a certain direction to evolution. So basically coming to almost to the end of it, he says that what I once said of him, I maintain, means about Mr. Hume, that he may outwardly sometimes sincerely forgive, but he can never forget. And he is that which Johnson is said to have much admired, a good hater. So he's always, feeling filled up with all this feeling of anguish, and he is a very good hater. And now not comparing, but telling Mr. A.P. Sinnett that how much immeasurably much higher he stands in his sight than Mr. Hume, with all his splendid mental capacity and outwardly pathetic nature, but the inward absence of anything like real feeling and heart. So that's what he's telling Mr. A.P. Sinnett, that he stands, they look upon him as with much more respect than Mr. Hume. And he says that Master M tells him that he will not take any precaution what suggested by A.P. Sinnett might have suggested in his letter. And again, another lesson in this, that he says he despises Hume, Master M despises Hume thoroughly. Means, but again, if we go by the words, we may think like we have that kind of feeling for someone, but it is not. Why? Because he also says, yet in a case of any real danger, he would be the first to protect him for the pains and labor given by him for the TS. So although that is the case what he has done, but Master M would be the first one to protect him also, because he took pains and he did labor for TS. And he says that in case Hume comes to know what he has really done a blunder, he will be ready to prove to others the existence of occult powers, but will not leave Hume one leg to stand upon. Because he says his punishment must be allowed to complete. And if in the middle only suppose the consequences were removed, then the desired effect will not be upon the person, and he will only retaliate upon innocent victims. And H has shown us to the world, like he has made a picture of the Mahatmas as dishonest and lying without having any undeniable proof. And still he's trying to portray the masters as we are even murderers, he says, but Master M, he says that we'll try to raise a Maya to make the world's good and then destroy it and show him a calumniator. I am afraid he is right from the standpoint of our rules and customs. So sometimes nature or the invisible forces, they even create certain situations or give some lesson to a person. Like we hear many instances that Lord Shiva appeared to Shankaracharya, or in front of Arjun also, or Lord Hanuman appeared in front of Bhim to give them certain lessons. So I am afraid he is right from our standpoint of view. Rules and customs, they are anti-European, I confess. I don't think when it is said anti-European that they are anti-Europe and anti-anybody they were created in that sense, but they were maybe anti way of living, current way of living of a certain culture, of a certain place. That they seem to be anti something, but I mean, no rules are made in a way that they are anti something, but they are in a proactive way. But maybe suppose a culture has a habit of taking alcohol, but there is a rule in certain place that no alcohol is allowed. So it would seem that this rule is anti that culture, but actually it is not. It is the way of living that is anti-rule or anti this regulation. And the last thing in this is that he says, with the exception of the telegram, clarifying again, M never wrote Fern but one letter. The 5 or 6 other letters, all of these things Hume have mentioned in his letter. So Master is again clarifying that 5 or 6 other letters in his handwriting emanating from the Dukpa who has charge of Fern. So that those were also the things that were happening in those times, and maybe still happens some way or the other, that when there are good forces at work, at the same time there are negative forces at work to ruin or to create obstacles in that work. And Fern hopes that AP Sinha does not spoil his work, and he will both remain a friend. And Fern will never repeat any experiment of the napkin, for the simple reason that he will be trusted with no more letters. And what Fern did, that there was a letter in which Fern has to pass that letter from the Mahatma to Hume. But since Fern was annoyed with Hume, he hid that letter in his napkin rather giving it to him directly, and thus giving an impression that it was phenomenally received. And then he lied about it. So that was the thing. And then a Master is saying that I have received a letter from Colonel Chesney. He will answer it in a few days with a young chela who will deliver it to your care. And do not frighten the boy, or he's saying that he is ordered to answer all the questions that he can, but no more. And he will proceed from Shimla to Bodh Gaya and Bombay on business and back home in the. And with this, he ends this letter, a very simple letter without any technical theosophy, as I said earlier, but it's still a lot to take away from, a lot of insights and a lot of things of human nature, I would say. Thank you for listening with patience.
Thank you, Shikharji. That was really a lot of teachings which you could glean from this letter and bring it out for all of us to assimilate. Thank you very much. And I now request Sister Meenakshi ji to give us the translation in Hindi.
Namaste. Thank you, sister. Thank you, brother Shikhar ji. आज हम लेटर नंबर 81 को पूरा कर रहे हैं। मास्टर कहते हैं, अब जब हमें लगता है कि वह समय आ गया है जब पूरे सत्य को नहीं बल्कि अधिकांश को उजागर किया जाए, और चूंकि एचपीबी ने हमारे आदेशों के अनुसार जानबूझकर अपने कुछ तथ्यों पर पर्दा डालते हुए लिखा, तो क्या इसलिए उन्हें असहाय स्थिति में छोड़ दिया जाए? क्या मैं या हम में से कोई भी उन्हें कभी भी अध्यात्मवादियों के शिकार के लक्ष्य के रूप में छोड़ देगा और विरोधाभासों पर हंसने के लिए छोड़ देगा? और जब मैं चातुर्य शब्द का उपयोग करता हूँ, जो कि मुझे पता है कि यह एक अमेरिकी अपशब्द है, और मुझे लगता है कि अंग्रेजी भाषा में इसका दूसरा अर्थ है, मेरा मतलब न तो चालाक और न ही धूर्त जैसे शब्द से था। मेरे सामने बहुत बड़ा बेढंग सा लिखा हुआ लेख है। उसका सही अर्थ समझाने के लिए जो कठिनाई है उसे दर्शा रहा हूँ, जिसमें एनिमल सोल का जिक्र है, स्पिरिट का नहीं, एस्ट्रल का जिक्र है, स्पिरिचुअल मोनाड का नहीं। इसे दर्शाने के लिए एक शब्द को डाले बगैर उस लेख में पुनर्जन्म न होने पर जोर दिया है। यदि आप अपने किसी मित्र से पायोनियर वृत्त पत्र के लिए गाय का चित्र बनाने के लिए कहते हैं और चित्र बनने की उसकी अक्षमता के कारण गाय बनाते बनाते भैंस या बैल का चित्र बनता है और यह छपता है, और शायद आप अपने काम में व्यस्त होने के कारण खामियों को देखने के लिए समय नहीं था, तब क्या आप अपनी चतुराई का प्रयोग नहीं करेंगे और पाठकों को यह साबित करने की कोशिश नहीं करेंगे कि कलाकार का वास्तव में गाय से मतलब था, और अपने मित्र की अक्षमता को स्वीकार करते हुए उसी वक्त अनुचित अपमान से बचाने के लिए जो कुछ भी कर सकते थे वह नहीं करेंगे। ह्यूम में न ही बोध क्षमता है और संवेदनशीलता है और न ही सच्ची दया भावना है। वह अपनी किसी भी सनक के लिए अपने प्रिय लोगों की बलि दे सकता है, और यदि उसे एक बूंद रक्त की आवश्यकता पड़े तो वह अनेकों की बलि चढ़ा सकता है। अगर वह समझता है कि गर्म रखने के लिए सती की आवश्यकता है, तब उसकी सुन्न उंगलियों को उससे काम करने में मदद मिलेगी, तब वह सती का प्रयोग करने की सलाह पर जोर देगा। आपको यह अतिशयोक्ति लग सकती है क्योंकि आपको उसमें के स्वार्थीपन की कोई कल्पना नहीं है। अपने पूर्व जन्म से लाए बेरहम अहम भाव, वह स्वार्थ और अहम भाव जो उपयुक्त परिस्थिति न मिलने के कारण अव्यक्त रहा। यदि वह उसमें निर्दयता से एचपीबी और परफेक्ट वे की समीक्षा के लेखक को आरोपित करता है और महात्मा गणों को शिक्षित यूरोपीय सज्जनों की तुलना में बुद्धिहीन दिखाता है, ईमानदारी या सही गलत की सही धारणा से रहित वह यूरोपीय दृष्टिकोण से स्वार्थी और भावना शून्य है, जिद्दी और मगरूर है, ऐसा नहीं कि वह आपकी या सोसाइटी की परवाह करता है। वह स्वयं को बचाना चाहता है। कोई विफलता आने पर वह एकमात्र ऐसा व्यक्ति होना चाहता है जो निर्दोष न हो सके तो बेदाग होना चाहिए। यदि इक्लेक्टिक को डूबना है तो वह इसके साथ नीचे जाने वाला एकमात्र व्यक्ति होगा, एकमात्र हंसी का पात्र होगा, और इस प्रकार उसका स्वार्थ और सावधानी पूर्वक तैयार की गई योजनाओं से कोई लाभ नहीं होगा। यह मानते हुए कि वह मुझसे बेहतर जानता था, सीसीएम को लिखित एचपीबी के जवाब में मेरे साथ उसने अपना स्पष्टीकरण जोड़ने के लिए वह मेहरबान और समझदार था, और कर्म के ऊपर का स्पष्टीकरण छोड़ जिसे उसने काफी सटीकता से समझाया, बाकी सब में गड़बड़ी कर दी। और अब जब मैं पहली बार उनके लेख में कही गई बातों का खंडन करूंगा तो वह गुस्से में आकर जिसे वह मेरा विरोधाभास कहता है उस पर अपना असंतोष व्यक्त करेगा। झूठ मानने का क्या एल्फा लेवी के आई एम दैट आई एम, मैं जो हूँ वह हूँ, यह एक अच्छा उदाहरण है मिस्टर ह्यूम के लिए। वह चाहता है कि हमारा अस्तित्व बना रहे, लेकिन वह कभी भी हमें अंतर्निहित शक्तियों का ज्ञान या ज्ञान की मान्यता को स्वीकार नहीं करेगा, जिससे उसके अनचाही सलाह और हस्तक्षेप उतना ही हास्यास्पद हो जाएगा जितना कि वे बेकार है। कई कारणों से जिसे आप ऑफेंसिव आर्टिकल, आपत्तिजनक लेख कहते हैं, उसका अवरोध करने का मुझे कोई अधिकार नहीं था। अपना नाम थियोसॉफिकल सोसाइटी से जोड़कर और अपने आप को प्रचार में लाने के लिए हमें भुगतना पड़ता है। इसे कर्नल ऑलकॉट हमारी महानता का दंड के रूप में कहेंगे। हमें हर तरह के विचारों को व्यक्त करने की अनुमति देनी चाहिए, चाहे वह हितकारी हो या दुर्भावनापूर्ण हो। किसी दिन हमारे चिथड़े होने की तो दूसरे दिन हमें उपदेश देने की, अगले दिन पूजा करने की और चौथे दिन कीचड़ में रौंदने की। दूसरा कारण है चौहान ने स्वयं आदेश दिया है। उनके दृष्टि से इसके मायने नई गतिविधियां, अप्रत्याशित अनपेक्षित परिणाम और संकट। निषेध करने वाले 12 चेलाओं के दस्तखतों में पहले 2 नाम स्वयं चौहान के गोपनीय चेलाओं के हैं। इस ओर से मिस्टर ह्यूम के लिए अब कोई उम्मीद नहीं है, सब समाप्त हो गया है। उसने बात को बहुत ज्यादा बिगाड़ दिया है और मुझे हमारे आदरणीय प्रमुख के सामने उसके नाम का उच्चारण करने का कोई अवसर नहीं मिलेगा। दूसरी ओर दोषारोपण से अच्छा भी हुआ। बाबू नोबिन बैनर्जी, जिन्हें आप जानते हैं, उनके 14 वर्ष के युवा बेटे ज्योतिर्मय को शिकागो से लगभग 100 मील दूर चैम्प्टोडोंग के पास हमारी एक लामासरी में शिष्य के रूप में स्वीकार किया जाना चाहिए और उनकी 18 वर्ष की कुंवारी बहन योगिनी को पाली के महिला मोनेस्ट्री में स्वीकार किया जाना चाहिए। यह आदेश चौहान ने दिया है। इस प्रकार संस्थापकों के पास कुछ ही दिनों में 2 प्रमाण रहेंगे और हमें मारने और अपने खुशी से पुनर्जीवित करने के लिए मिस्टर ह्यूम की सनक पर निर्भर नहीं होंगे। जहां तक यह साबित करने की बात है कि हम प्रकृति के रहस्य को अपने वैज्ञानिक और धर्मशास्त्रियों से अधिक जानते हैं या नहीं, यह आप पर और उन लोगों पर निर्भर करता है जिन्हें आप इस महत्वपूर्ण कार्य में मदद करने के लिए चुनेंगे। मुझे आशा है कि आप मिस्टर ह्यूम को निम्नलिखित तथ्यों से अवगत कराने का कार्य करेंगे। हालांकि सोसाइटी के लिए उनके द्वारा किया गया कार्य आखिरकार सबसे महत्वपूर्ण हो जाएगा और यह सबसे उपयुक्त फल प्राप्ति कर सकता है, फिर भी उनके निंदनीय लेख में उनके द्वारा किए गए श्रम को नष्ट कर दिया। अब लोग उसे पागल मानेंगे, हिंदू सदस्य उसे वर्षों तक दोष देंगे और हमारे चेला उसे संदेहवादी के रूप में मगरूर घुसपैठिया, किसी भी कृतज्ञता के लिए अपात्र के रूप में देखेंगे, जो उनमें से एक होने के लायक नहीं। इसे आपको अपनी व्यक्तिगत राय के रूप में बताना चाहिए, निश्चित ही तब तक नहीं जब तक कि यह आपके अपने विचारों से मेल न खाता हो और इस मामले में आपके अपनी भावना के रूप में दिया जा सकता है, क्योंकि मुझे व्यक्तिगत रूप से यह आदेश दिया गया है कि मैं उस दिन तक उससे नाता न तोड़ूं जब तक संकट काल न आए। यदि वह इक्लेक्टिक में अपनी आधिकारिक स्थिति को यानी ऑफिशियल पोजीशन को बरकरार रखना चाहता है, तब उसे ऐसा करने के लिए मदद करे। यदि ऐसा नहीं है, तब मेरा आपसे आग्रह है कि आप स्वयं प्रेसिडेंट का पद स्वीकार करें। लेकिन यह सब मैं आपकी चतुराई और विवेक पर छोड़ता हूँ, ऐसा मास्टर सीनेट से कहते हैं। उसे यह भी बताए कि चेलाओं का विरोध हमने नहीं किया है, बल्कि चौहान ने दिए हुए प्रत्यक्ष आदेश का परिणाम है। पोस्टमैन द्वारा कुप्रसिद्ध लेख लाने से 2 घंटे पहले हेडक्वार्टर्स में विरोध प्रदर्शन हुआ और उसी दिन भारत के कई चेलाओं से टेलीग्राम प्राप्त हुए। डब्ल्यू ऑक्सले के लेख के साथ संलग्न करने के लिए ज्वालपुल द्वारा भेजे गए फुटनोट के साथ सितंबर महीने का अंक न केवल हमारे साधकों के बीच बल्कि इंग्लैंड और अमेरिका के साधकों के बीच सनसनी पैदा करने की आशंका है। मास्टर एम ह्यूम का पूर्णतया तिरस्कार करते हैं, फिर भी किसी भी असली खतरे की स्थिति में थियोसॉफिकल सोसाइटी के लिए उसके द्वारा किए गए कष्ट और श्रम के लिए उसकी रक्षा करने में सबसे आगे होंगे। उनका कहना है कि यदि ह्यूम को उसकी बेहुदा गलती का पता चलता है, तो वे दूसरों को सिद्धियों के अस्तित्व को साबित करने के लिए तैयार हो जाएंगे, लेकिन ह्यूम को छोड़ेंगे नहीं। उसकी सजा पूरी होने ह्यूम ने हमें दुनिया के सामने बेईमान और झूठ बोलने वालों के रूप में दर्शाया है, इससे पहले कि उसके पास कभी भी एक भी निर्विवाद सबूत था कि हम वैसे थे। यदि कल ह्यूम हमें हत्यारों के रूप में प्रस्तुत करना चाहता है, तो मास्टर एम उन शब्दों को उपयुक्त बनाने के लिए माया का प्रयोग करेंगे और फिर उसे नष्ट कर देंगे और उसे एक निंदक के रूप में दिखाएंगे। मुझे डर है कि हमारे नियमों और रीति रिवाजों के दृष्टिकोण से वह सही है। मैं यह स्वीकार करता हूँ कि यह यूरोपीय दृष्टिकोण से विरोधी है। टेलीग्राम को छोड़कर मास्टर एम ने फर्न को बस एक ही पत्र लिखा था। बाकी 5 या 6 पत्र उनकी लिखावट में उस डुप्पा ने लिखे थे जिस पर फर्न का दायित्व था। उन्हें लगता है कि आप उनके काम को खराब नहीं करेंगे और आप हमेशा उनके प्रति वफादार और सच्चे मित्र बने रहेंगे, जैसे कि वे आपके लिए सच्चे बने रहे। फर्न नैपकिन के समान वाला कोई भी प्रयोग नहीं दोहराएगा। इसका सीधा सा कारण यह है कि उस पर अब और अधिक पत्रों को सौंपा नहीं जाएगा। मुझे कर्नल चेस्नी का पत्र मिला और कुछ ही दिनों में एक युवा चेला के माध्यम से आपको मेरे सम्मानपूर्ण अभिवादन के साथ सौंपेगा। उस लड़के को डराए ना। उसे उन सभी प्रश्नों का उत्तर देने का आदेश दिया गया है जिनका वह उत्तर दे सकता है, उससे अधिक नहीं। शिमला से वह कुछ काम के सिलसिले में बोध गया होकर बॉम्बे जाएगा और नवंबर के आसपास घर वापस लौट जाएगा। थैंक यू। नमस्ते।
Thank you, Meenakshi ji, for the translation. And now our session is open for question and answers, or if anybody would like to discuss any more points. So I request you to please unmute and speak.
Vibhaji, namaste. Actually, I have a request to make.
Yes.
Actually, the School of Wisdom is going to start very soon, which I will be attending. So there is one question in the chat, and if you permit, I can just clarify, and after
Yes.
that you can allow me to leave. My apologies for that.
No, not at all. Yes, please go ahead.
Because Madhi ji has asked, that's because there was a mention the Master M despises Hume is not understood kindly clear. So actually, again, I would like to say that when all these things are being said, let us not like there was about the rules and regulations are anti-European or Master M despises Hume thoroughly. Let us not take those words as we have those feelings. Why? Why, first of all, he says he despises means feel contempt for somebody, like that the person is selfish or worthless and even, not even to be considered for anything good. So, but there is a difference between having a prejudice about something, someone, or conditioning, and looking at something as a fact. When we have a prejudice or conditioning, then a lot of emotions are attached to that. But when we are looking at something like, let's say, cactus we are looking at, there are a lot of thoughts, right? But when we are looking only a flower without thorns, that is a flower, that is a fact. But when we start attaching emotions to those facts, then it becomes something totally, personal. And that is why Master KH is saying that although M despises Hume thoroughly, but he also compliments that, yet in a case of any real danger, M would be the first to protect him for the pains and labor given by him for the tears. Now, can we do that? When we have hatred or negativity for the person, we are so blinded with our emotions that we cannot see beyond them. So we are blinded by emotions. But that's why this case or these words, although written in, goodwill, just simply, so let us not think that he's feeling some hatred towards H, or but basically that he knows that this is the kind of a person and how to deal with it. But since he has worked for DS, so in case he needs any help, he is more than willing to give it. So I hope I made that clear, Madhviji. Or okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and I'm sorry, I think Vibhaji is capable of taking it if there are any questions or anything. Otherwise, I'll take leave.
Okay,
No.
Shikharji, thank you very much for accepting our invitation to conduct the study, and thank you so much. We hope to see you in some other letter study which you take later on.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone.
Thank you. So,
विभाजी,
yes,
विभाजी नमस्ते.
namaste.
ये ह्यूम जो है नेगेटिव वर्क जैसे कर रहा था, तो क्या उसके पास्ट कर्मा की वजह से भी इफेक्ट हो रहा है नेगेटिविटी?
इनफैक्ट मास्टर ने ये बड़े क्लियरली लिखा है लेटर में कि अपने पूर्व इनकारनेशन से ये सारे संस्कार उसके अंदर थे, और संस्कार जो है वो सुप्तावस्था में होते हैं. दे आर लेटेंट and they did not get the right conditions because of his Western education, the Western society, the culture, the status which he was having. So those sanskars which he was carrying, the things which were latent in him, they did not sprout. Okay, but yes, that is the normal cycle. It happens with every one of us. हमारे अंदर जो पहले के संस्कार होते हैं, जो हम अपने पिछले जन्म से लेके आते हैं, पिछले नहीं बल्कि पता नहीं कितने जन्मों से वो चीजें हमारे साथ साथ चली आ रही हैं, और जब उन्हें सही वातावरण मिलता है तो वो उजागर हो जाती हैं, और वरना वो सुप्तावस्था में रहती हैं. तो यही चीज इसके ह्यूम के साथ भी थी. इनफैक्ट आपने जो प्रश्न पूछा था कि मास्टर ह्यूम को डिस्पाइस करते हैं, उसमें एक पॉइंट और मेरे मन में आया कि बेसिकली जो भी हम काम कर रहे हैं, हमारे सारे एक्शंस, दिस इज बेसिकली वी आर वर्किंग आउट ऑफ आवर पर्सनालिटी, आवर लोअर सेल्फ, द लोअर क्वार्टनरी माइंड विच इज ड्रैग्ड टुवर्ड्स द desire. Okay, so that selfishness comes in, and that is what is not right. These negativities which are there, it is there in Hume also, and that is what master despises, because masters always operate from the higher self. They have already made transcended their personality. They have perfected themselves, and they don't have a personality as such. They operate and they are centered in their higher self. So what is it that he despises? It is the personality which is working through these selfish or the lower levels. But Hume had so many good qualities. The work that he did for the society, that was appreciated by the masters. Anything good, anything virtuous in us, it always comes from the higher self. So that is why masters are ready to protect him if required. I hope this clarifies.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other question from anyone? So then with this, we have completed chronological letter number 81, and we bring the session to the close with our closing prayer. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritangamaya. Om Sarvesham Swastirabhavatu, Sarvesham Shantirabhavatu, Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu, Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu, Lokaha Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu, Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramaya, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukha Bhag Bhaved. Om Shanti Shanti Namaste and thank you all for joining.
Thank you very much.